6 times you should stay silent, even when you're right. Some truths are not meant to be spoken, at least not immediately. We imagine ourselves as warriors of clarity, armed with knowledge and conviction, ready to correct every error we see. Yet there is a quiet mastery and restraint that the world rarely teaches. I learned this one rainy evening, sitting on a park bench beneath the skeletal branches of oaks, the air smelling faintly of wet earth and decaying leaves. A voice in my head, insistent and sharp, wanted to speak the truth, to set right what was wrong. And yet, the warmth of a stranger's hand on mine, her touch gentle, reassuring, without judgment, reminded me that some truths are better carried silently, at least for a while. Silence is not weakness. Silence is discipline. The Stoics, from Epictetus to Marcus Aurelius, understood that the greatest power lies not in shouting what is right, but in knowing when your words serve the world, and when they serve only your ego. It is easy to assume that speaking up always matters. It is far more difficult and far more consequential to master the art of staying quiet when every fiber of your being screams to act. There are moments in life that demand silence, even when we know we are correct. The wisdom of restraint is not taught in schools, nor is it celebrated in a culture obsessed with immediacy, viral reactions, and the loudest voice. It is earned through reflection, hardship, and the deliberate practice of Stoicism. And today, we explore 6 such moments, times when silence becomes a testament not to ignorance, but to strength, foresight, and virtue. 1. When you don't have evidence. Knowledge is a fragile thing, easily shattered by overconfidence. To speak without evidence is to gamble with your credibility and with the trust others place in you. I remember a meeting long ago, the kind where ideas collide and tempers flare, where I felt certain I was correct about a decision that would affect everyone in the room. My heart raced, my pulse quickened, and I could almost taste the metallic tang of certainty on my tongue. Yet I paused. I realized I had no actual data to support my assertion, only assumptions and the stubborn weight of my own intuition. Epictetus reminds us that we are often prisoners of our perceptions, mistaking certainty for truth. To speak without verification is not to enlighten, it is to mislead, often unintentionally. Silence here is not passive, it is active discernment. The Stoic knows that the cost of being right, when unsubstantiated, is far higher than the temporary satisfaction of asserting oneself. Words spoken without evidence can ignite conflict, erode trust, and tarnish relationships in ways that cannot be repaired by later vindication. To resist the temptation to speak, to hold your conviction behind the wall of verification, is a subtle but profound act of wisdom. I remember walking home that evening, the cold drizzle soaking my jacket and smelling the wet asphalt rising in mist around my shoes. My own thoughts seemed louder than the world, but I resisted the urge to shout them aloud. It was in that moment I understood what the Stoics meant. Mastery over oneself is greater than mastery over the world. The restraint of a few words is the scaffold on which trust, clarity, and integrity are built. 2. When your words may hurt someone. Sometimes the truth we hold is sharper than we imagine. Our conviction can carve wounds that linger far longer than we anticipate. I recall a late afternoon, the sun low, painting the walls of a small cafe gold. I sat across from a friend, noticing the tremor in her hands as she stirred her tea, the faint scent of chamomile mingling with the aroma of coffee. I wanted to correct her perception, to insist she was seeing things incorrectly. Every instinct told me to speak, to assert the clarity I believed I possessed. But I paused, listening instead. Her eyes, wide and vulnerable, told me more than words ever could. Speaking would have been a hammer. Silence, in that moment, was a balm. Marcus Aurelius teaches that our interactions with others should be guided not by what we know to be true, but by what is beneficial to the other. The Stoic does not confuse correctness with necessity. Words, once released, cannot be retracted. Their echo lingers in the heart, shaping thought and feeling long after the conversation ends. To stay silent is not to deny reality, but to honor the capacity of another to process truth in their own time. Sometimes restraint is kindness disguised as discipline. The ability to choose when to speak and when to stay quiet is a test of character far more exacting than any argument won or lost. In this restraint, there is also humility. The Stoic recognizes that we rarely perceive the full context of another person's life. Our insight is partial, our understanding incomplete. By holding back, we respect the complexity of the human experience and prevent harm born from our limited perspective. And often, silence itself communicates more wisdom than any speech ever could, letting empathy and timing carry the weight that our words might crush. 3. When speaking would distract from action. There are moments when action matters far more than words. I once watched a small group of people racing to carry supplies through a flooded street, their shoes soaked, their hands trembling with exertion. I had a correction, a suggestion, something I knew would improve efficiency. My mind shouted it loudly, the temptation almost unbearable. But I stayed silent, stepping into the rhythm of movement rather than attempting to redirect it. My words, if spoken, would have fractured focus, delayed action, and risked the very help we were trying to give. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that virtue is in doing, not in explaining. Speaking at the wrong time can turn effort into chaos and wisdom into distraction. The Stoic recognizes that timing is everything. A well-chosen word can inspire, but an ill-timed one can hinder. To stay silent is to serve the greater good, to allow the momentum of action to carry itself forward, unimpeded. Words, after all, are only useful when they illuminate a path, not when they obstruct it. I remember the smell of wet wood and iron as I waded through the floodwaters, feeling the sharp bite of cold on my skin, and realizing that sometimes the loudest voices achieve the least. Silence in those instances is a measure of discernment, a conscious choice to prioritize effect over ego. The Stoic strength lies in knowing when to step forward with instruction and when to step back and let deeds speak for themselves. 4. When pride tempts you to correct someone. Pride can disguise itself as righteousness. The urge to correct another often stems less from concern for truth and more from the satisfaction of proving oneself superior. I once caught myself in a conversation with a co-worker, certain that my interpretation of a project was flawless. The warm sunlight spilled through the office blinds, highlighting dust particles in the air. My hands itched to gesture, to assert dominance through clarity. Instead, I inhaled deeply, noticing the faint aroma of coffee and printer ink, and chose silence. Pride, I realized, would only serve my ego, not the situation. Epictetus warns that the mind clings to perceived authority, confusing being right with being virtuous. The Stoic sees that correction is a tool, not a weapon. It is offered only when it serves the development or safety of another, not the indulgence of one's vanity. Speaking out of pride can wound, alienate, or create resistance, even when the words themselves are true. Silence here is an act of humility, a measure of restraint that cultivates respect, patience, and wisdom. Through restraint, one discovers that the value of truth lies not in its exhibition, but in its judicious use. The satisfaction of being right is fleeting. The preservation of harmony, trust, and dignity endures. The Stoic's challenge is constant. to distinguish between the need to speak and the desire to satisfy ego. Choosing silence over pride strengthens character in ways that immediate verbal triumph cannot. 5. When others are not ready to hear the truth. Sometimes people are not ready for reality. I remember standing beside a friend on a chilly evening, the fog rolling in low over the street, muffling the distant sounds of traffic. I knew something essential, something that would change their understanding, shift their perspective. My instinct was to speak, to unveil the truth immediately. But I noticed the tension in their shoulders, the tightness in their jaw, the nervous cadence in their voice. Timing, I realized, mattered more than the truth itself. Silence was the gift I could give. Seneca wrote that wisdom must meet readiness, that instruction offered too soon can be lost or resisted. A Stoic recognizes that truth is not a weapon to be wielded carelessly. Speaking when others are unprepared often triggers defense, misunderstanding, or harm. Silence allows space for reflection, growth, and eventual comprehension. It is a form of respect, a recognition that others must encounter reality in their own time and through their own readiness, not by force. In moments like this, restraint becomes an act of compassion. We hold back not because our insight lacks value, but because the right timing amplifies its power. The Stoic understands that life unfolds in its own rhythm, and that patience is sometimes the greatest service we can offer to those we care about. Words released too early may scatter like seeds on barren soil, but silence nurtures their eventual growth. 6. When saying nothing is the greater contribution. Finally, there are times when the most profound contribution is no contribution at all. In a library, I watched a debate among scholars, their voices rising and falling like waves against stone. I knew facts, references, interpretations that could sway the discussion, but the room was already alive with discovery. Adding my words would not illuminate, it would clutter. I remained quiet, listening, letting the dialogue breathe, feeling the warmth of leather-bound books and the faint scent of old paper. My silence became part of the flow, supporting rather than dominating it. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that not every moment calls for assertion. Some moments require presence, observation, and restraint. Words, though powerful, are not always necessary. Silence can create space for thought, reflection, and understanding. It allows others to articulate, to learn, and to grow. Speaking without necessity risks overshadowing what is already good, valuable, and functional. Silence, paradoxically, can be the greatest act of service. By stepping back, we witness the beauty of collective thought, the quiet growth of insight, and the subtle dynamics of understanding. Choosing not to speak when every instinct tells us otherwise is a demonstration of wisdom, discipline, and respect for the process of life. The Stoic recognizes that the world is simultaneously chaotic and beautiful, and that our focus, speech, and action must be measured accordingly. Conclusion: silence is not absence, it is a deliberate, disciplined presence. It shapes character, preserves harmony, and strengthens understanding. To speak is easy. To remain silent, even when justified, is mastery. Stoicism teaches us that virtue lies in restraint, in timing, and in the discernment of when words serve life rather than ourselves. There are 6 moments: when evidence is lacking, when words may harm, when action matters more than instruction, when pride tempts, when others are unready, and when silence itself contributes, where withholding speech is the greater act of wisdom. Life, in all its chaos and beauty, asks us to choose carefully. And in choosing silence at the right moment, we discover the quiet power that echoes far longer than any spoken word.